Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first lesson of Theory 2, which we're going to call Lesson 21. So Theory 2 actually covers lessons 21 through 40. So it will run a lot like Theory 1 did. We're going to start off with an evaluation, and the evaluation will actually cover Lesson 20. And if you have any difficulty, then I want you to go back and review. I'm also going to give you a review on all of the theory briefs and phrases that you learned in Theory 1. So I'm going to read those at a faster pace because you should know them by now. And if you struggle at all, then that's going to tell you that you need to go back. I will even give you what lesson they were taught in so that you know exactly what lesson to go back in. Okay? All right, so let's start off with our evaluation. And congratulations, you've made it to Theory 2. You're halfway there. Pretty soon you will start speed, so that's something to be very proud of. All right, so let's go ahead and cover Lesson 20, evaluation. Here we go. Number 1, ugly. The dog looked ugly when he was wet. Number 2, suspect. They caught the suspect. Number 3, cozy. That is a cozy chair. Number 4, prefer. I prefer to be called by my first name only. Okay, number 5, married. Are they married yet? Number 6, tightly. It is tightly woven. Number 7, mover. The mover will show up at your house in the morning to move your property. Number 8, coffee. Do you like to drink coffee? Number 9, draw. Draw me a picture. Number 10, favor. Do me a favor. All right, now let's compare. Let's compare what you have to what you should have. See how you did. Now I'm going to point it out to you on the board so you can take a look at what should be written as opposed to what you actually wrote. So number 1 is ugly. U-G, second stroke, come back for L-A-E. Number 2, suspect. S-U-S, come back for P-E-K-T. Number 3, cozy. K, long O-Z, come back for A-E. Number 4, prefer. P-R-E-F-er. And that's a shorty. Remember, the only beginning words that have a beginning sound of D or E is written with a long E, so it doesn't conflict with did he or he. All right. All right. So prefer, P-R, short E-F-er. All right, number 5, married. M, long A-R, come back for A-E, and a third stroke, come back for final D. So that's 3 strokes. Don't forget the final ED words, you're coming back for a final D. All right, then we've got tightly. T, long I-G-T, come back in a second stroke for the L-A-E. Number 7, mover. Now you've got a choice here. You can either write that like it's spelled M-O-F-er, or if you hear the long U, you can write it as M long U-F-er. I like to write it like it's spelled M-O-F-er, mover. but you can use a long U if you want. Okay, number 8, coffee. K-O-F, second stroke, come back for A-E. Number 9, draw. D-R-A-U, that's a broad A. And number 10, favor. F, long A, final F-er. Favor. All right. Now, I want you to keep your machine by your side and go ahead and get ready to write. I'm going to give you briefs and phrases that you learned in Theory 1. Let's see how you do. We're going to start with briefs in Lesson 1. Here we go. These are all just going to be briefs. Then I'm going to go and flip back over to all the phrases. Okay, here we go. Lesson 1, briefs. You, and then in between you can strike your comma or your period. It doesn't matter. It, he, the, I. Lesson 2, were, with, to the, would, had. Lesson 2, phrases. Were you, with you, with the, with a, to the, at the. Would you, would the, would he, had the, had you, had a, had he. Okay, lesson 3, briefs. Is, are, be, could, would, can, company. Lesson 3, phrases. Is it, is the, is he, it is, he is, are you, you are, we are, to be, would be, can be, can the, can I, can you, can he, can a. Lesson 4, briefs. Will, letter, remember, today, open. Lesson 4, phrases. Will the, will you, will he, will be, will I, will a, he will, you will, we will, it will, I will. Lesson 5, briefs. What, when, which, where, about, did. Lesson 5, phrases. What is, when is, when the, which is, where is, where the, about the, about a, Did the. Did he? Did I? Did you? Did a. Okay. Lesson 6. Briefs. In. Some. Any. Ask. Help. Month. Credit. Consider. Lesson 6. Phrases. In a. In the. Okay. Lesson 8. Briefs. If. Of. Have. Inform. Information. Very. Lesson 8. Phrases. If I. If he. If you. If the. Of the. Have the. Have a. Have you. Lesson 9. Briefs. Many. This. Until. Well. Account. Lesson 9. Phrases. So many. This is. This will. He can. You can. We can. It can. She can. I can. I am. Lesson 10. Briefs. On. And. Yes. Which really isn't a brief, but we like to throw it in there because yes, sir is a brief. Okay. No, sir. Yes, sir. Ben. Not. But. Why. Accident. Cannot. Objection. Lesson 10. Phrases. On the. And I. And you. And the. And a. And he. Are not. Is not. Did not. Were not. Will not. Have not. Had not. Cannot. Do not. Why not? But the. Okay, lesson 11 briefs. Good. Go, which we write that as G-O, but I want to make sure you don't get that mixed up with good. Going. Judge. Gentleman. Gentlemen. Under. Understand. Lesson 11 phrases. To go. Will go. Can go. Would go. I go. You go. Lesson 12, briefs. Should. much, shall, usual, unusual, receipt, purchase, under, understand. Lesson 12 phrases. Should be, should go, should I, should you, should not, very much, too much, so much, he shall, we shall, you shall, I shall. Lesson 13, briefs. Knowledge, acknowledge, furnish, enter, suggest, suggestion, after, order, water, paper, person. Okay, lesson 14, was, were phrases. I was, he was, she was, this was, when was, what was, which was, who was, why was, that was, how was, it was, they were, you were, we were, who were, what were, how were, which were, when were, there were, that were, why were. Lesson 15, briefs. Regular, advertise, satisfy. Lesson 15, phrases. You have, we have, did have, would have, should have, to have, will have, I have, do have. Lesson 16, briefs. Tonight, business, advice, advise, together, necessary, correspond, correspondence, correspondent, report, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Lesson 17, briefs. That, they, write, wrote, written, writer, think, question. Lesson 17, phrases. That is, that the, that will, they are, they will, they have, they can, they go. Lesson 19, briefs. Even, evening, morning, particular, police car, recognize, possible, finance, financial, convenient, convenience, upon. And lesson 20 briefs. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. All right, so those are your briefs and phrases that you learned in Theory 1. Again, if any of those didn't sound familiar, or you forgot how to write them, or you struggled with the speed, just go back and practice those until you can keep up and feel comfortable. You want to be able to hear that and write it as soon as you hear it, because once you get into speeds, you will start out at 60 words per minute, and you need to just know those. You need to be able to write it as soon as you hear it. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and start lesson 21.1, which is word practice. Today we're going to learn the final NT contraction, which is written as the final NT. So we still use our brief if there is a brief for that word. So for example, the first word is can't. So we're going to use our brief for can, but we're following it up with the same stroke with the final NT. And before I go any further, I want to give you 2 new rules with Theory 2 so that you understand this. Number 1, you will notice that none of the phrases are underlined from here on out. So the phrases will not be underlined. So when you do your homework, you have to still phrase, but it's not going to be underlined for you. So you have to recognize when you have a phrase and make sure that you phrase them, because you will be marked off -1. That's considered an error if you don't phrase. Once you get into speeds, again, phrasing is going to save you strokes, which saves you time. And you want to get up to 200 words a minute, 225 words a minute. So you need every second that you have to get as many strokes in as possible. So just know that you won't see anything underlined. So you have to phrase on your own now, from now on. And the second thing that I want to bring to your attention is the outlines will no longer appear in the stenotype configuration. So if you see, you know, like for instance, this first page, can't, you'll see its initial K, final NT, but it's not spelling out the PB for the N, because now you know all of the letters and, you know, all the letters in the alphabet and what it entails on our machine. So we no longer have to show you that the Y is KWR. You should know that that's the initial Y, and so on. So it's exciting. So those are our 2 main differences now that you're in Theory 2. Okay, so let's look at can't. Can't is going to be written as initial K, final NT. Aren't, we have our brief for R, and then we're just adding the final NT, all in one stroke. Aren't, R, final NT. Isn't, initial S, final NT, all in one stroke. Didn't, initial D, final NT, all in one stroke. Hadn't, initial H, final NT, all in one stroke. Hasn't, now notice this, we're adding the A there for hasn't, because we want it in one stroke. H-A, final NT, hadn't. Then we've got haven't, initial V, final NT. Shouldn't, initial SH, final NT. Weren't, initial WR, final NT. Wasn't, W-U-N-T. So some of these are brand new. Okay, wouldn't. Now, normally, wouldn't or would is written W-O, but we're just adding the N-T for wouldn't. Now, don't get that confused with won't. Notice that the next word, won't, is W long O-N-T. So the only difference between wouldn't and won't is the long O. So highlight that, okay? I encourage you to highlight it so it stands out. Wouldn't and won't are very similar. Okay, doesn't, D-U-N-T, doesn't, don't, D-long-O-N-T, and couldn't. Now our break for could is initial K, final D, but we want to write couldn't in one stroke. So that's why we're writing it as K-O-N-T, just like wouldn't. Okay, so those are the final NT contractions. If you look over at 21.2, these are sentence drills, and focuses on different sentences using our new final NT contraction words. The first line there, it says, we can't meet the demand. Just a little reminder there, D is going to be D long E. Otherwise, your software will think it's did he. Okay, it's a prefix that has the D in it, so you need to make it a long E. Next sentence, I can't discuss the matter. Now, over in section 21.5, you're going to get a new brief, which is discuss. And the way we write discuss is S-K-U-S. So you don't have that one yet. You will get it in this lesson. So they kind of gave it to you a little prematurely. So discuss, right above discuss, write it as S-K-U-S. That's going to be a new brief you're going to get in this chapter. Okay. All right. I'm just going to point out the things that I want to kind of go over with you. The rest of the sentences, it should be self-explanatory. Line 2, second sentence, it says, we aren't on the roster. Notice that on the is a phrase, but it's not underlined because you should know that we phrase on the, okay? Roster is going to be written as R-O-S. Come back for a second stroke, T-E-R, roster. Line 3, second sentence over, it says, Susan isn't feeling very well. Now, just a little reminder, any proper names that have more than one stroke or syllable, more than one syllable, doesn't have to be flagged. So it's very nice. So you can write Susan as S long U, come back for S-A-N. Or you can even write it as S long U-Z. If you hear Suze and then come back for A-N, that's also a proper way to write it. Now, if you do want to flag all proper names, you certainly can, but the rule is you have to flag it in the last syllable. So in this case, if you wrote it as S long U, come back for S-A-N, you would have to flag it in the last stroke, S-A flag N in the SAN, okay? Same with if you wrote it as S long U-Z, and then if you came back for A-N, you would flag it with A flag N. Okay, so that's the rule. But I look at it as if you don't have to flag it, don't flag it. Why do it if you don't have to, right? So the only time you have to flag proper names is if they're only one syllable, like Jill, Bill, Joe, and so on. Now, there is an exception to some of the names that are multisyllabic, and most of those end with the Y sounding. So like Harry, you don't want that to conflict with the apis Harry. So you would write that as H long A-R, come back for A flag E in the second stroke. Carry, like carry the load, as opposed to Carrie is my cousin. If it's Carrie, my cousin, I would write it as K long A-R, come back for A flag E in the second stroke. Harry, Carrie, Mary, same thing. So there's a few, okay? And most of them have a Y ending. Candy, I eat the candy, as opposed to Candy is my sister's name. You would flag it in the second stroke, okay? All right, so let's look over at line 6, third sentence over. You shouldn't be offended. Let's look at offended. That would be long O. Come back for F-E-N-D, and then it's an ED word, so you have to come back for final D again. Otherwise, it would just be offend. Line 8, first sentence, we haven't used that process. Process is P-R-O. Come back for S-E-S. Line 10, second sentence over, he wouldn't mow the lawn. Lawn is going to be a broad A, L-A-U-N. And the third sentence, wouldn't you need more than 75? I want you to highlight more than. More than is a phrase. And the way we write that is M, long O-R-N, mourn. And you're probably asking, well, how do we write mourn? Like, I will mourn the loss of my dog, M-O-U-R-N. That is simply written as M-O-U-R-N, just like it's spelled. And then if you have mourn, we will wake up in the early morn, meaning morning. That would just be M-O-R-N. Okay, so more than is written with a long O, M long O-R-N. Okay, so make a little note of that. And then, of course, line 16, third sentence over, Bill won't live with that. Make sure you flag Bill because it is one syllable proper name. Okay, one more word that I didn't mention, but I should. Line 12, first sentence, it says the Bureau won't consider it. You're going to write that as B long U-R, Bureau, come back for long O, Bureau. Okay, all right. 21.3, we've got words that have the silent W. So line 1, we've got whole. Anytime we have the silent W, we're still including the W so it doesn't conflict. Some of these words do conflict with other words. So anything that's spelled with W-H or W-R, you're still using the W. So whole, I want the whole pie, W-H long O-L, as opposed to dig a hole, which would be H long O-L. So that's a great example right there, why we use the W-H for W-H-O-L-E. Holy, W-H long O-L, come back for A-E. Wholesome, W-H long O-L, come back for S-O-M. And I've had students in the past ask me, can we use the brief for some, which is initial S-M, but we cannot. Otherwise, the software thinks that it's a brief and it will separate whole from some from the word. Okay. Whooping, W-H-A-O-P, come back for a second stroke with final G. Okay. It's spelled with the U, so we're going to write it with the A-O there. W-H-A-O-P, whoop, come back for final G. All right. Line 3, whom, W-H-O-M, whom, whomever, W-H-O-M, and then in the second stroke, come back for final effer. Who, W-H-O, whoever, W-H-O, effer, that's all in one stroke because it can be written in one stroke. Whomever, it cannot be written in one stroke, but whoever can. So we want to save as many strokes as possible. Number 5, or line 5, wrap. Okay, let's wrap the present, W-R-A-P. Wren, W-R-E-N. Wreck, W-R-E-K. Reek, W-R-A-E-K. Now, line 7, let's go over whose, and who is. Obviously, who is self-explanatory. Who is going to the town is written W-H-O, final S. Now the first whose is going to be the possessive whose, like whose car is outside. And the way we write that is W-H-A-O-Z. Okay, whose car is outside? That's possessive. Okay, we can't say who is car out is that. That wouldn't make sense to say who is car is outside. So that's how we know that it's possessive whose. Okay, the next one over, whose. This is the contraction for who is. Who's going to the store. Okay, you can say who is going to the store. So that's how you know it's the contraction. And that is written as W-H-O-Z. So if you notice the first two ways, whose, W-H-A-O-Z, possessive, as opposed to whose, the contraction is W-H-O-Z. Only thing that's different between the two is the A. So you have to be really careful. Don't get them mixed up and practice those as opposed to who is, which is W-H-O, final S, okay? So the first two are written with a Z, and then who is written with an S. All right, 21.4, we've got practice sentences. Okay. And again, I'm going to just kind of go over some of these, not all of them. Line 1, whose job is it? Again, it's possessive. It belongs, the job belongs to the person. So you're going to write that as W-H-A-O-Z. You can't say whose job is it. Okay. Line 3, who's calling her now? You can say who is calling her now. So that's how you know it's the contraction, which it's written as W-H-O-Z. Just like the phrase who is, using the S, except the contraction is W-H-O-Z. Okay. All right, everything else is pretty explanatory. On line 9, it says wrap the package for me. Package would be P-A-K, pack. Come back for A, final J, package. Some people like to try to come back for long A, but it's not package, it's package. So you're using a short A. Okay. All right, very last sentence in line 14. The boy has whooping cough. Cough is just going to be written as K-O-F, cough. All right, looking on over at 21.5, we've got new briefs. Minute, let's look at some of our briefs here. Minute is going to be written with initial M-I-N, and that's a short I, min. Then we have general, J-E-N, gen. Opinion, initial P, final N. Machine, initial M, final N. Discuss, S-K-U-S. We talked about that in the previous section. Yesterday, initial Y-E-D. Effect. Now the first effect is a noun, such as the law goes into effect next week. Effect, and that's written as E-F-K. It's a little tricky at first, but you will get used to it. So you're using everything on your right hand. E-F-K. So you got to practice that. It's a little hard for me because this is all spread out. E-F-K. All right. Then the next brief that we have is affect. You can usually hear it in the speaker's voice. Effect, affect. The second one, affect, is a verb. It will affect all of us. It's a verb. Okay, so affect is going to be A-F-K, and that's a little easier because you're using your left thumb, so your right thumb is free to use the F-K here, okay? All right, so those are your briefs for lesson 21. 21.6, we've got a brief drill. So again, you're just separating each brief with a comma. 21.7, practice sentences. Let's look at line 7, first sentence. Generally, comma, I would think so. Now, you've got two ways that you can write generally. The brief for general, which is one that you're just learning. General is J-E-N. So generally can either be written as J-E-N, come back for A-E, or since it has two L's there, you can write it as J-E-N, come back for L-A-E. It's up to you. Either one works. Let's see. Line 15, second sentence over, it says the crop was affected by the hail. Again, a reminder, we cannot phrase by the because it conflicts with bit. Now in speeds, you can if you want to. You're either going to want to flag bit or the phrase by the. You have to choose and then flag one and stick with it. And then let your software know this is the one that I'm going to flag. Because bit and by the, they both come up. Okay, but in theory, don't phrase it. 21.7 is continued. All of those look great. 21.8, you've got consonant compounds. We're going to focus on initial GL, initial GR. So this is going to look a little funny when you go to write it and read it, and it's going to seem funny. The GL, we're using the TK, PW, and the HR. The G is the TK, PW, and your L is HR. So you're using all of this. So when you go to read that, it's going to say TK, PW, HR. So it's going to look odd. Okay, so let me get my pointer here. Oops. We've got glass, initial GL, AS. Glib, initial GL, short IB. Glad, initial GL, AD. Gleam, initial GL, AEM. Gland, initial GL, AND. Globe, initial GL, long OB. Gloom, initial GLAOM. Glaze, initial GL, long AZ. It's not glace, so don't use an S, use a Z, glaze. Glove, initial GL, O, final V. Glue, initial GL, long U. Glitch, initial GLICH. Glee, initial GL, long E. Grade, initial GR, long AD. Grand, initial initial GRAND. Grab, initial GRAB. Grip, initial GR, short IP. Groove, initial GRAO, final V. Grape, initial GR, long AP. Green, initial GR, long EN. Gross, initial GR, long OS. Grit, initial GR, short IT. Gripe, initial GR, long IP. Grove, initial GR, long O, final V. And grind, initial GR, long I, and D. All right, section 21.9. These are practice sentences that focus on these consonant compounds. Let's look at line 2, second sentence. Tell him he has glaucoma. And again, when you see a medical word or a long word, don't freak out. Just write it phonetically. So let's look at this. Glau, G-L-A-U, co, K long O, ma, initial M-A, glaucoma. Line 7, second sentence, he joined the global tour. Global is considered a squeeze, initial G-L, long O-B-L, all in one stroke, global. And tour is going to be written as T, long U-R, tour. And looking down in line 12, first sentence, greet the statesman. Statesman is going to be written S-T, long A, T-S, come back for M-A-N. And you're probably wondering, why don't I come back for the final Z in states? That's because statesman is one word, so it's considered one word. So it's not considered a plural. Okay, so that is why you're going to write it as ST, long A, TS, states, and back for MAN. It's one word. So it all goes together. Okay, line 13, second sentence over. He sought the Holy Grail. Sought is going to be written as S-A-U-G-T. It's a GT word, even though it's spelled O-U. It has an A sound, has a G-H-T ending, so we're going to use the broad A. The Holy Grail, holy, it's going to be written as H long O-L. Come back for A-E. And Grail is going to be written as G-R, long A with the flag, final L, because Grail is capitalized. All right, so we're going to flag it so that it's capped. Same with line 14, first sentence. It is time for the Grim Reaper. And somebody may have already gone in your dictionary and added Holy Grail in there as a capital word, like Grail. But I still want you to flag it because it's Grail is only one syllable, and I don't want you to get out of that habit, okay? All right, so line 14, first sentence, it is time for the Grim Reaper. Same with Grim, you're gonna flag it. G-R with the flag, short I-M, Grim. Reaper doesn't have to be flagged because it's two syllables. And then just a reminder, first sentence in line 15, the grazing land was for sale. Sale, S-A-L-E, is flagged. So it doesn't conflict with S-A-I-L. All right, 21.10. This is our big one. We're learning time figures today. Now, the biggest advice I can give to you about time figures is to listen to what the person says and write what you hear. Don't think about, oh, is there a colon there or not? You're listening to what you hear and you're writing what you hear. So let's look at the first section, the first 3 lines there. These, we're going to start with time figures that just have the number along with the colon 00. So anytime we have time figures, and this goes also with a test, if you're typing up a test, you always want a colon 00 for a time figure, or colon 30 if it's 130. You always have a colon and then the numbers after it to show that you're talking about a time figure. That's a rule. Okay, so the first section, we're going to only focus on the actual figure, talking about a time. Pick me up at 1. The way that we tell our software that we're talking about a time, saying, hey, software, we need it to show a colon 00, is by hitting the initial K or the final K, depending on what side it is that we're using. So the rule is, whatever side we're using as far as the number goes, the opposite side we're using the K. So anytime we've got numbers over here, we're using the final K. Anytime we're using the numbers here, 6 through 9, we're using the initial K. So if I say be there at 1, I would write that as 1K, all in the same stroke, 1K. That would tell my software, I need you to show this as 1 colon 00. Be there at 2. So I would strike 2K. Be there at 3, 3K. Be there at 4, 4K. Notice I'm hitting them at the same time. It's not 4 then K. No, it's 4K. Be there at 5. Okay, so here's my 5, 5K at the same time. Be there at 6. Now, 6 is where it changes. Now we're using letters on the final side, so we need to use our initial K, because now we never want the K to be, if we're using initial numbers on the initial side, we never want to use the initial K. It's always, you're always using the K on the opposite side of where what the number is that you're using. So if I'm going to use 6, then I need an initial K. Okay, be there at 7, K7. Be there at 8, K8. Be there at 9, K9. Be there at 10. Now 10, we're using the 1, 0 together. My pinky's hitting the 1, my thumb's hitting the 0, and I'm doing final K, 1, 0, K. All right, now be there at 11. Now 11, we're using 1, 1. So in that case, I always want the K to be the last letter before the colon, because the K signifies colon. That's why we use K for colon. Well, it's with a C, but we're using the K on our machine. So if I say be there at 11, I would strike 1, lift up, strike 1K together, lift up. Okay, so you might want to highlight 11. That one's a little tricky because it's 2 strokes. 1, lift up, strike 1K. And that's how we write 11. Be there at 12. I'm going to strike 1, 2, final K all at the same time, lift up. Okay, so that's 12. Next section, now that we're going to talk about the number, time number, along with o'clock. Sometimes people will say 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 10. Sometimes they just say 1. So I just showed you how to write it if they just say 1. But other times somebody might say 1 o'clock, meet me at 1 o'clock. But we still have to use our K so that we have our colon 00. But then to tell our software that somebody said o'clock, we write that as KL final K. Initial KL final K, all on the same stroke. KL final K. So if I say be there at 1 o'clock, I'm going to strike 1K so that I tell my software we're talking about the colon 00, and then I'm going to come back for KLK. Be there at 2 o'clock, 2K, come back for KLK. Be there at 3 o'clock, 3K, come back for KLK. Be there at 4 o'clock, 4K, come back for KLK. Be there at 5 o'clock, 5K, come back for KLK. Be there at 6 o'clock, K6, come back for KLK. Be there at 7 o'clock, K7, come back for KLK. Be there at 8, K8, come back for KLK. Be there at 9, K9, come back for KLK. Be there at 10, 10K, come back for KLK. Be there at 11, 1, lift up, 1K, come back for KLK. Be there at 12 o'clock, 1, 2K, come back for KLK. So anytime, if they say o'clock, you're using KLK. Think of that as a brief, okay? All right, now, next section, time with hours and minutes. So if they say, be there at 6:30. Now, with these, anytime we're dealing with minutes, we're always going to put the K in before the minutes because the K, again, represents the colon. So if I say be there at 6:30, I'm going to write that as K6, and then come back for 30 together. What's the next one? 4:15. Be there at 4:15, 4K, come back for 1, 5. Okay, be there at 2:20, 2K, come back for 2, 0. Be there at 11:45. So again, you may want to highlight this one. 11:45 is going to be 1, come back for 1K, come back for 4, 5 together. The 4 is going to come before the 5. Okay, 12:45, 1, 2K all together, come back for 4, 5 together. Okay, 8:55. Let's look at that one. So my 8's over here, right, on the final side. So I have to use initial K, 8, and then come back for 5, come back for 5. 9:30, K9, come back for 3, 0. Together. 1:05, 1K, come back for 0, come back for 5. Now in that case, the 0 is going to be a separate stroke from the 5 because normally the 5 comes before the 0. So if it's 05, you're going to strike the 0 and then come back and strike the 5. All right, last section here, times that follow AM or PM. Always flag AM and PM so that you are telling your software that you want periods. So they might say, meet me at 9 AM. Again, you have to use the K9 to let our software know we're talking about a time figure. We need the colon, and then AM. That would be A flag M. It's very easy to flag the AM, PM. And you can practice that. A flag M, P flag M. A flag M, P flag M. So practice that, okay? 9:30 a.m. So I'm going to do K9, come back for 3, 0, come back for A flag M. Okay, 1 p.m. 1K, come back for P flag M. Okay, 1:45 p.m., 11 o'clock a.m. Let's do that one. And you might want to highlight that one again. I think the 11 time frame is probably the most challenging. So 11 o'clock a.m. So we have 1, come back for 1K, come back for KLK for o'clock. And what was it, AM or PM? AM. A flag M. Okay. Sometimes they say o'clock, sometimes they don't. If they don't say it, you're not adding the KLK. So if it's a time figure, you're always going to either use your initial K or final K, depending on where your number is. And if they don't say o'clock, then you don't have to write KLK. That's only if they say o'clock. Same with AM and PM. If they don't say AM or PM, then you don't have to write it. So that's why, you look at this and sometimes it looks a little maybe challenging, but just remember, you're writing what you hear, okay? All right. Looking on over at 21.11, these are just a time figure practice drill, okay? And again, let's look at line 6. The last time figure over, it says 11:58. So we would write it as 1, come back for 1K, and then 58, 5, 8 together. 5, 8 can be written together. All right, and then 21.12, these are practice sentences that all deal with time figures. So by the time you get to this, you should be pretty comfortable with writing your time figures. Again, if you make a mistake, strike your asterisks and rewrite the time figure, okay? So again, I really encourage you to practice those time figures before you actually do the homework. It will help tremendously, especially with a more challenging drill like the time figures. It is a little challenging at first, but I promise it will get easier. The more you practice, the easier it gets. So with that being said, looks like we have completed lesson 21, and please don't start the read back portion until you have done lesson 21 at least 3 times, preferably 4 or more. And I will see you soon in the read back portion of the class. Have a wonderful day.